Hello, everyone. We are live on AWS On Air for another AWS What's Next show. AWS What's Next allows you to dive deep on some of our latest launches, and this time we will be talking about Lightsail Container Service, the newest launch from the Lightsail team. I am Ana Cunha, developer advocate at AWS, and I'm joined here today by my special guest, Shishira Narayana, senior product manager on the Lightsail team. Welcome, Shishira. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Anand. Thanks for having me on the show.
I'm a big fan of Amazon Lightsail, and I'm very excited to talk to you today about the newest Lightsail launch. So, before we dive deep into your new launch, can you tell us some more about what Amazon Lightsail is and what problems does it solve for our customers?
Yeah, definitely. Amazon Lightsail was launched in late 2016. Our main mission when launching Amazon Lightsail was to build something which was the easiest way to get started on AWS. As you know, AWS has hundreds of services, and when a new customer who is new to the cloud or new to AWS starts uh, directly on AWS, it can be a bit overwhelming to like learn hundreds of services, fully utilize their potential to build their applications. So we wanted to give them an easy way to get started on AWS, and that's where we conceptualized Lightsail. In 2016, we launched as a purely as a VPS provider, providing cloud virtual machines. But over time, we realized customers need more than just VMs to build their applications on the cloud. So we have added things like databases, load balancers, uh, even recently like CDN to the ecosystem of Lightsail. So customers can build a complete web application or any of their internet facing applications on Lightsail using these different building blocks. So primarily, Lightsail focuses on three key principles. One is ease of use, second is simplicity, and the third one is uh, predictable bundled pricing. Like you can take the example of instances. Instances come as instance bundles. So when a customer purchases an instance bundle from Lightsail for a fixed price, say like prices starting at $3.50, they get everything which is needed to run a cloud virtual machine, including the actual instance itself and a data transfer quota to go with it, disk attached to it, and all the metrics and logging which needs to be there with that instance. So everything comes as a fixed bundle price. There are no surprises to the customer at the end of the month on how much bill they're getting. It's like if it's a $5 bundle, then it's that's exactly what they're going to pay at the end of the month. That's basically the background about like say.
Yeah, no, I think Lightsail is pretty cool, and it makes it really simple for customers to get started with AWS.
Yeah.
So why containers on Lightsail?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, like you previously mentioned, uh, because of our principles of simplicity, when you create a virtual machine on Lightsail, there's very minimal configuration you have to do. You just pick the instance size you want, and then like we basically configure all the underlying complexities like networking or security management, all those things, and customer basically just gets an instance they can work with. So this brought the simplicity of like having a local server to the customers in the cloud without having to worry about all those other underlying complexities. So extrapolating the same concept to containers, we all know that containers have become a primary component in most of the application architectures today. Most developers prefer containers to be their primary mode of developing applications because of portability and the quick way they can spin up containers and get running on their applications. So there are a lot of developers who have heard about containers. They want to benefit from the cool features of containers. But when it comes to actually running a containerized workload on the cloud, it's quite complex or like needs more skills than just like doing a Docker build and running a container on your local machine. They have to set up container clusters. They have to set up the network plumbing. They have to manage how they are going to do the routing and things like monitoring the container services, DNS management. There are like so many of these different components which make it overwhelming for someone new starting on containers or Docker to run their applications on the cloud. So we saw an opportunity here where we could light sail the whole experience of running containers on the cloud. And with the growing demand of containers from customers, it was the right time for us to build a light sail container offering and bring the same features of simplicity and ease of use of Lightsail to containers as well, along with the pricing simplicity. So uh, just like other Lightsail services, Lightsail container comes at a fixed, predictable price. So when you create a Lightsail container service, you can while creating itself, see what it will cost you at the end of the month, and that's exactly what you will pay, nothing extra.
Yeah. Yeah. When you start playing around with containers on your local machine, things seem pretty easy. And I bet when you're moving them to the cloud, then everything gets really daunting with a lot of options and configurations and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
So, what are some of the core features of Lightsail containers?
Yeah, definitely. So, just like you mentioned, when you are running container on your local machine, basically like everything you want is Docker installed on your machine, and you have your application, and you just build the container image out of it and run it on your local machine. But when it comes to the cloud, you have to provide so many configuration parameters, manage so many resources. So Lightsail containers basically takes care of all those underlying complexities, and it expects only three inputs from you when you are containing a Lightsail container service. First one is obviously the container image of your application. Uh, it could be written in any language or anything. It just needs to be a Docker image. The second input parameter is what's the power of the container nodes you want. When I say power, it's basically the CPU and RAM combination. We provide a fixed set of CPU and RAM combination. You can just pick from one of them. And then the third parameter is the number of nodes you want for your container service, which is basically the horizontal scale. You can start with one node, or you can have like multiple nodes for your container service. And once you choose these three basic parameters, you can just get started on Lightsail container service, and it could be either through console or the CLI. At the end of creation of this container service, Lightsail takes care of taking your container image, spinning up these container nodes you specified, deploying it on them, making sure they are healthy, and then it even creates a HTTPS load balance endpoint for you. At the end of the service creation process, you get a HTTPS endpoint which is running your application. So literally, you give these three input parameters and get back a HTTPS endpoint which securely connects you to your container application on the cloud.
So with three parameters, you're good to go.
Yeah, exactly.
That's really awesome.
Yeah.
So what are? Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. So obviously, you can do additional things as well. Like you can give environment variables or launch commands, expose different ports. Those are all the things you can give as additional things, but those are the basic three things which you need to get started.
Oh, okay. So you have some flexibility besides those three parameters. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So what are some of the ideal workloads for Lightsail containers?
Yeah, definitely. So Lightsail container, basically, like I mentioned, focus on users who are getting started on containers or don't want to deal with the complexities of managing the whole infrastructure on the cloud. So that brings us to two different types of user groups. One could be the user group, which is it could be students or hobbyists, someone who has heard about containers and they just wanted to get started and they don't know like where to start. This could be an ideal stepping stone for them, where knowing the basics of like how Docker works and like generating a Docker image, those are all the skills they need, and they can bring their web applications to the cloud with Lightsail containers very easily. And the second user group is the one where they may be even familiar with things like Kubernetes or how to run a complex cluster and everything. But to just run a proof of concept, or even to get started in a dev test environment and see like how the application works, they may not need all the complex orchestration mechanisms to exist. They just want to run the container image, see how it works, and get started on it or validate it. So it's suitable for both these customer categories. When it comes to the actual applications, obviously you can run any sort of web applications or Dockerized applications. And The applications which don't need advanced configurations, say like GPU support, or need to meddle with the VPC configurations, networking, having complex routing setups. Those are the things which are not explicitly supported on Lightsail containers. Obviously, AWS has full-fledged container orchestration systems for it. So those are the ideal targets for it. With Lightsail, the customers can start with these containerized applications, which are simpler in nature. They could be like single container services, or they could even be like different microservices talking to each other, or they could even be container services talking to other Lightsail resources like Lightsail instances or Lightsail databases. Those are the kind of workloads which work well. Obviously, once customer matures on these Lightsail services, they have a very easy way to graduate to other AWS, full-fledged AWS services, just like we do on instances or databases.
Okay, so it seems like a good entry point for someone just getting started with containers, or someone who wants to spin up a proof of concept quickly without having to deal with all the overhead of orchestrator, right?
Yep. Yep.
Cool. So before we move on to our demo, can you tell us how does Lightsail containers compare to other AWS container offerings?
Yeah, definitely. So obviously, AWS has a whole breadth of offerings. We have our own container orchestration mechanisms like ECS and EKS, and resource providers like Fargate and EC2. And obviously, there's Lambda as well, and Beanstalk. So there's a whole breadth of offerings which are like suited for different types of workloads and different use cases. Like I mentioned, Lightsail containers is the best way to get started on, or the easiest way to get started on containers with like simpler web applications. But obviously, as the application needs change, there's things like auto scaling, or having to scale to hundreds of nodes, or having custom routing logic to the container services, or having things like service mesh, or very granular security controls, or networking controls. Those are the kind of things which are well suited for full-fledged orchestration mechanisms like ECS or EKS, based on the skill sets and the demands of the organization. So that's where the full-fledged offerings from the AWS fit in. Obviously, Beanstalk and Lambda, those are some other variants of it as well.
Yeah. Okay. So do you want to move on to the demo?
Yeah, definitely. So I can start with the demo, and we can walk through some of the features while we
Yeah.
go through the demo as well. Let me present my screen. Okay, so hopefully, if time permits, we will do two demos. But let me start with the first one for now. In this first demo, we'll be creating three container services. As you can see on the screen, there's service 1, 2, and 3. Service 1 is a Redis data store, and service 2 and 3 are PHP clients. These are the custom PHP clients. I'll just walk through in a minute. So what this microservices architecture is doing is, there is a Redis store running, and there are two PHP clients which talk to this Redis store. They set a counter on this Redis store, and uh, each of these clients has a button to increment the counter. We can see that when one of the client increments the counter, we can see the counter incremented, and it reflects on the other client as well. We are basically just showing how these clients utilize a single data store. And in terms of the different types of services, you can see from the diagram that service 2 and service 3 are web-facing services, which are PHP web applications. But they are talking to service 1, which is a Redis service, which is not exposed to the internet, but these two services talk to that Redis using a local address internally without exposing them to the internet. Uh, I mentioned that you can create services both through console and CLI. So let's get started creating this Redis service directly through the console.
Shishira, I couldn't help but notice that you only have 9% left on your battery. Just want to make sure you get that plugged in so we don't lose you in the middle of our demo.
Let's see what I can do for this.
No worries. I don't know. It might last for, we only have another 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Make sure.
So my
Okay. I think we're gonna restart your screen share too, because some parts are getting cut off. Just one sec.
Huh.
Can you like stop sharing and reshare?
Sure.
This is proof that we're doing this live. Don't worry about it.
So I think the issue with my battery is that if I plug out the dock, I lose the webcam.
Okay.
Which may be okay, I guess.
I think it's like trade-off wise is better than losing you.
Yeah, let me do that.
Okay. All right, so Shishira will be right back with us. So Shishira told me before that Lightsail Container Service has a 3-month trial. If anyone wants to check that out, that's pretty cool. The whole 90 days. I might check it out myself. We also have some upcoming sessions. Oh, so Shishira is back. Hey, Shishira.
Hi.
I was just letting people know about the 3-month trial.
Thank you. Yeah, so let's start with the creation of the Redis service. Let me know once you're able to see my screen.
Yes. Okay, now it's fixed. Awesome.
Nice. Okay, so let's go to the Lightsail console. As you can see, this is the homepage of the containers console. I have a bunch of services already created, but let's start with creating a Redis service in the Oregon region. The region is already selected. Like I mentioned, we allow some choice of powers, which is the CPU and RAM combination. You can see there are 6. I'll just leave it at the default one, and scale is the one where you choose the horizontal scaling. I'll just pick it as 1 node
so
for now.
Basically get both horizontal and vertical scaling with these 2 parameters.
Yeah, so when I change the horizontal scaling, you can see like what exactly my service costs at the end of the month. So this is what you will pay. Obviously, you can change the power and scale later on if your demand changes. At any time, we don't restrict you from changing that, but your price also changes with that.
Okay. And then it also mentions the free for the first 3 months over
Yeah,
there.
that's true. Microservice, the power micro and scale one comes for free for 3 months. Here we have some example images. I'll pick Redis because that's what we are doing now. And I'll say like the service name to be Redis and say create container service. So right now it's creating a container service with Redis running on it. While it's spinning up that service, let me go back and show you the PHP application uh, client, which I had it in the service 2 and 3 boxes of the demo. Uh, this is the code for that PHP application. It's a very simple application. You can see it's expecting two environment variables. One is called client, the other one is called Redis. Client is just used to identify what's the name of this PHP client, service 2 and service 3, what we saw in the PPT. And then Redis is the environment variable which gets the address of the Redis data store and connects to it on port 6379. You can see there are two buttons on this. One shows what's the current value of the counter. The name of the counter is counter. And then the other shows other increments that counter when you click on it by one. So yeah, it's a very simple PHP application. I have taken this PHP application and put it in a folder. You can see it here. It's in the source. I have the index.php file. Obviously, if you have to Dockerize the application, you need a Docker file. I have this Docker file here. Again, it's a very simple Docker file. It takes a base image, which is Apache running PHP with it. Then we copy the index.php, which was in the source folder, to the web application home folder of the Apache. And then we expose the port 80. There is this additional run command here. Here we are installing the Redis plugin for the PHP. This enables PHP to connect to Redis. Now that we have this basic thing, we'll go to the terminal and build the Docker image from this PHP file. I'm in the folder and I'll just say Docker build. I'll tag it as WM demo.
So another thing that I really like about Lightsail is that it has its own console page, right?
Yeah.
Different from everything else we see on AWS, much simpler, cleaner, easier for anyone getting started.
Exactly. So Lightsail has its own console, and when you come to the homepage, you basically have the services which Lightsail offers. There are instances, containers, databases. So you are not confused with hundreds of different.
Very user friendly.
Yeah. So while the Docker application is building here, and while we have the Redis service being also created, let's create our third service through the console. The second one, I'll just show it in a bit how we can create it from Docker Hub, but let's just create a third service which doesn't have any image associated with it. We'll show like how to push that image directly from the terminal to Lightsail service. But let's just create an empty service for now. Let's call it as client 2. I'll just create. Let this be just like being created in the background. So coming back, I think we are almost done with building our some of this Docker image build lines you are seeing here, they are purely related to installing the PHP plugin, the Redis plugin, all those plugins we have. Users don't need to worry about any of these. This just happens to Docker. Okay, so we have our Docker image ready. Now what I will do is, there are two ways you can reference images in your container services. either you can pull it from a public repository like Docker Hub, or you can directly push the image from this laptop to, like, say, container service directly. So first we will see how we can use Docker Hub to do it. What I'll do is I'll just do Docker. I'll tag this image we just now created to one of my Docker Hub repositories. We call it as v1. It's tagged, and now I'll do a Docker push. Okay, so like you see here, it's pushing it to Docker Hub right now.
Yes, one thing I really like about containers is like reusing the existing
Layer.
layers.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
so cool.
Yeah, so we have the image passed to Docker Hub. I can even go here and this my Docker Hub open here, so you can see. I can go to my profile or my content. Yeah, you can see here I just
There
updated
it is.
a few seconds ago. So now let's come back to this containers homepage. And now let me create a container service, which is the client one, using the images we just now pushed to Docker Hub. I'll go to deployments, say custom deployment. Here, let's call it as client one. And I'll do, like, the Docker Hub image repository I just create. And if you remember, there was two environment variables it was expecting.
Yeah.
So we'll give those two. We just expose the port because it's a web application, and then we say client one. We call this as client one. Create container service. So while this one is creating, if you remember, we created an empty container service called client2, which is ready. So for this service, what we do is, instead of pulling the image from Docker Hub, we will directly push the image from this uh, terminal to the service itself. So what we'll do is we'll use the Lightsail CLI. We'll just say AWS Lightsail. We'll use the command push container image. We'll call the service name, which was client2, and we'll just put a label to identify the image, which was the VN demo, and the image name itself, which was also the VN demo. We'll say push.
Okay, so I can either use a container registry or do it directly from the CLI.
Exactly. So when you directly do it from the CLI to the Lightsail container service, we take the image and we put it for you in a private repository, so it's not exposed to the public, and it remains securely within your account.
That's really awesome.
Yeah.
Shishira, unfortunately, we're right about time for our next
Yeah.
session. But
So, like, in the last minute, I can show, like, I have created services in another region. So once you have
okay.
deployed this, you can go to this client one, and you can see that it's connecting to a Redis server, a Redis data store, and you can say, like, implement, and you see it here. And if at all you went to this same setup and went to client two, uh, and clicked on this, then you see that when I show the counter, it shows 3. So basically, both client 1 and client 2 are sharing this Redis and showing the value.
Yeah, so we have two clients connecting to the same Redis, correct?
Redis data. Yeah, and they're all running as services within containers.
So I encourage everyone to check out the full demo for Lightsail Container Service. It's available on the YouTube channel for AWS. Chishira was on the AWS What's Next show with Nick and Rob, I don't know, 3 weeks ago. So you can check it out over there. Thank you so much, Chishira. Thanks for taking the time to talk to us. It was really great knowing about the new Lightsail container launch.
Thank you so much, Anna, for having me on the show. It was great talking to you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.